Welcome to Empowered Living. I'm Ann Shu. On this podcast, innovative leaders and visionary experts share insights and practical tools for work, family, and marriage. Each episode, we'll explore how to elevate your life while staying grounded in what truly matters to you. You're working hard to navigate relationships, build a thriving family, and create a legacy of purpose. We're here to help you do that with confidence and intentionality. So if you're ready to live a life by design, you're in the right place. Let's dive in. Welcome back to Empowered Living. I'm your host, Ann Shu, and today's episode is one that hits on leadership, family, and identity in a way that will stay with you long after this episode ends. My guest is Barrett, Marine veteran, business coach, a husband of more than 20 years, and a father who is raising his kids with intention and principle. Barry lives by what he calls the 4 F's: faith, family, fitness, and finance. And he doesn't just preach them. He structures his entire life around them. In this conversation, we explore the parenting principle that shaped Barry's entire approach to raising his kids. We also talk about the tension between wanting strong, resilient children and unintentionally projecting your own stuff onto them. And then Barry shares how he thinks about marriage, money, and mindset in a way that completely reframes what long-term alignment really looks like. It's real, it's grounded, and it shows what becomes possible when you choose to lead with intention at home and everywhere else. Let's dive in. Welcome, Barry. I am so excited to chat with you today.
Hey, Ann, how are you doing?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks for asking. If I was any better, my name would be Ann Shu.
I can't wait to spend this next hour with you. I'm so excited about our conversation.
Yeah, me too.
Okay, let's just dive in because there's so much that I want to cover. So I know that you live your life by the 4 F's. Can you share what those 4 F's are and tell our listeners how you use them?
Yeah, you bet. In order of importance, you've got faith, your belief system about God, Jesus, and all those types of things, right? And then you've got your family, your spouse, your kids, extended family. And then you have your fitness. And so how do you take care of what I call your meat suit, right? Because you only get one. And it's yours for this lifetime. And then the last is finance. And that is how you handle your business, how you handle your job, how you invest, how you're a fiduciary with God's resources. And that's the 4 F's.
And then how have you used these 4 F's to just live this intentional life that I see you living?
Yeah, I love that question. The other day, one of my clients, and he is not a believer. And so 2 of them in the room, one was an atheist and one was agnostic. And I pushed the agnostic just to make a decision. I'm like, at least have the courage to make a decision, okay? And that was just a good joke. And so we set up the faith. And so agnostic says, Barry, do you make every decision based on your faith and this thing called the Bible? And I'm like, well, all my good and great decisions are based on the Bible. All the decisions that I have made that didn't turn out well were against the Bible. So I wouldn't say I make them all that way, but all the great ones that I make start there and have that foundation because it's based on principles.
And what does this look like in your daily practice, your daily life?
So my daily life, and let's just start with the faith component, right? Understanding the beginning, understanding the values. They're called the 10 commandments, not the 10 suggestions, right? Most of them are the keep you out of the courthouse, right? If you murder somebody, you're going to the courthouse. If you covet your neighbor's stuff and go into debt that you can't afford, you're going to the courthouse. If you cheat on your spouse, you're going to the courthouse. Like, these are just to keep you out of the courthouse. Mm-hmm. And so if you start with the 10 commandments, you're like, okay, this is the 10 things that if I live my life by this, I'm going to at least stay out of the courthouse in a negative way. Right. And so as you move through it creates this structure first, right? People second, and we know that, that in the EOS. But God, on the 6th day, God created man. The 5 days before that, he was creating structure. And so then he created man to quote, rule over the structure and the things in the structure. And so you get as a man, I get the right, or the responsibility of taking care of everything in my purview. And so when I think about the way that my faith is set up, it says that I am the head of the household, right? And some people take umbrage with that. What that means is I get the responsibility of serving my wife and my children with my own needs being second. Not that I come in and get to say, here's what I think and here's why I think it, and you will do what I say, because that isn't even biblically sound. This is the responsibilities that I have. Therefore, I need to do these things for you so that we can have a great life. Or not so great life. I don't know.
What about in family?
So then we go to family, right? And so as we understand the Bible, we go to family. And so my first responsibility is to my wife. God gave my wife first. And then my second responsibility is my children. And they are just passing through the old household, right? And so me and my wife get together and we're raising our children to be good citizens out in the world and leave and cleave, right? We leave our family and we cleave to our spouse, and then we become extended families for them. And then we can participate in any way they feel fit. We don't get to cross their boundaries. So my son's 21 years old, and we have moved from a father-son relationship in such a way I was basically letting him know how things were going to go in this house, to now he's in college and I'm still supporting him, but he gets to choose whatever the heck he wants to do. Now, if he does things and starts to do things that are outside our belief system or our philosophies, we get to cut him off monetarily. Not as a you have to do what I say or else, but like that is life consequence. If you are not doing the things that the person paying your bills wants you to do, they will stop paying your bills. This is a principle of life. We do it on our businesses. And so so my daughter's 17. She is starting to get more autonomy. She has a job. She has to do more what we want her to do than he does. Until she graduates, goes to college, and then she'll get those same privileges, right? Or those extra, because she'll take on more responsibility that's not here. And so we're just trying to raise them so that they are going to live on their own, right? And so with our family, we just live like we're supposed to live, I guess.
Tell us about the rituals or the habits that you used in your parenting journey to help cultivate and grow these children who, you've already launched one, but you're about to launch another one, to be healthy, thriving, strong, grounded adults.
Yeah. So number one, I think the most important decision that a person makes is who they marry.
Mm-hmm.
And so I can really say that I married a Proverbs 31 wife. And so that was decision number one. It's like, hey man, here we go. I think I got more lucky than good, because at 25, I didn't know what it was even doing. I didn't have a dad to speak of to mentor me, and I had no clue what I was doing. So I got really lucky. If I had go back and talk to a 19-year-old Barry, I would say, hey, go seek out a mentor that teaches you how to find a Proverbs 31 wife. And then I would have eliminated all the people who were in my life that were not that. So, right. And so I start there, marry someone. I got lucky. And so habits and things like that. So I also married someone who is very much into taking care of herself. She worked out. She was is a believer and had these habits already. And so I married someone with better habits than me. And so the habits that we did every day is to create, number one is taking care of our health. Making sure that we're eating the right things. That's just a foundational habit. And so workouts, those are what they call keystone habits, right? And then, you pray every day. You read the word every day, right? To set up the rest of the day. And so that's a key habit. Making sure that you're listening to pure, powerful, and positive voices, either podcasts. I listen to a podcast every day, sometimes 3 or 4, because I'm a junkie that way. Really high, what we call fact finder, And then,
what are some of your favorite ones?
My favorite podcast right now is Ken Coleman, the front seat, right? Front seat. Yeah. And it's become one of my favorites and the other day he had John Maxwell, Patrick Lencioni, Dave Ramsey, like that one. If anybody wants to listen, that was over 100 years of wisdom in 96 minutes. And I'm telling you, I'm listening to it twice again. I'm getting ready to go. I'm going back through it. That's a really good one. Another one is Dr. Peter Attia for health, right? So I have these different podcasts for each part of the F's. And so that's a family one. And so those are just two of my favorites.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What have you guys done to help make sure that your kids are grounded and, quite frankly, like not growing up bratty?
So I read a book a long time ago, got lucky to find it, and it is Have a New Kid by Friday, right? And so one of the main principles is let life be the consequence. And so whatever life would throw at a person, that's the consequence in your household. And so I remember when I was a work from home dad, I was starting my business as a sales trainer. I wanted to be a sales coach, whatever that is, right? And my son was in the 4th grade, and I'd read this book, and I was on the phone with a potential client, just talking and trying to sell like we do, and it's 7:30 in the morning. And his job was to get ready, and he messed around and didn't get ready. And so we were running late. And so it wasn't my job to rush around to make sure he wasn't late. I was ready to go when he was. And so we drove there, and I had to walk him in, because when they're that age, you walk in and you sign in. I wrote Luke's, and you give the reason too. And I said, well, Luke's lack of preparation. And the other parents that were late looked at it and they're like, what? And it was actually the teacher's like, what is this? And I said, yeah, he just was wasting time, and you should do to him with whatever you do to kids that are late because they're late. And my son's like, oh, Dad. And then, but about a month later, we were late because of me. And so I walked in and I wrote Dad's improper preparation. And so I told him, I'm like, I wouldn't want you to punish my son for being late. I'll take whatever punishment you might have. And so more's caught than taught. That's number one. But life be the lesson is like, if I stopped spanking my children, and I never would have thought that I'd been that dad. You can hear by my voice, I'm a Southern guy. But life does not, if you're late for work or you don't do what you're supposed to do at work, no one hits you. Like, I've never been punched or hit. Well, I've never done it. And if somebody tried, I think I would feel a certain way about it. And so I'm like, well, if life doesn't throw violence or hitting at someone, then I'm going to stop hitting my kids. And it's a little nervous because it's like, spare the rod, spoil the child. If you read it, it's just like consequences, right? Spare the consequences, you spoil the child. It doesn't have to be a belt. My parents unfortunately thought it had to be a belt. And so I just started, like, if you steal, you're going to get prison time, right? You go into your room, but you're not going to have anything in that room. Go into your room, for some people, like, it's fun. You got video games, TV, books. Like, you get nothing. You just get to sit there in solitary confinement. That's life. Often it's funny. I ask people, I'm like, when did you teach your kids to steal? And they're like, we didn't. I go, well, then why do they? You don't have to teach kids to steal. You have to teach them not to, right? And so you do that with natural consequences. Now, there are some things, like if your son or daughter is 2 years old and they're trying to run into the street, you don't want natural consequence. So when they're that age, you need artificial consequences, right? So what artificial consequences can you put into place until they understand natural consequences? Because we don't need that to happen, right?
When your son is already in college, what are you doing to maintain your relationship, to stay connected and to make sure that your relationship is still growing healthy and strong?
Yeah, I love that. We do it 2 different ways. My wife has her way and I do my way. My wife talks to him a lot, like every day. They'll text, they'll chat, they'll phone call, whatever. I probably don't talk to him, sometimes not even once a week. He and I don't have to talk to know that we're good. And he knows, like, I do what I do, he does what he does. And what we do is we have the group chat with him, my brother, my nephew, right, and me. And so we send, like, shorts, like, we're like, hey, this is pretty good, or a podcast, and go, hey, listen to this. And so that's our connection. And so we're like, and then we'll thumbs up it or whatever. It sounds silly, but we have such a deep relationship. My son and I spent so much time on the golf course and in other ways growing up. We just get each other. We don't have to talk. We don't have to think about it. We just know. And so he will call me when he just went through this big thing that was one of the hardest things that he's went through. So he would call me and be like, what's your advice? What do you think of this? And then he calls mom and he'd get a different one, but he will call her when he really needs a soft place to land. Like he's
Mm,
like, hey mom, and she'll like, oh, that's cool. And she'll really like help him. Then he'll call me when all that's done and go, hey, I need to hear some tough love.
yeah.
Now, sometimes she'll give him that too. So, she's not all like hugs and kisses. And so our relationship is built on just the way we were when we was growing up. Like he just knows. And I asked him early, I said, well, why don't you just call me sometimes? He's like, well, Dad, your voice is always in my head. And so I don't know. That's how we just keep in touch.
Tell me a little bit about your marriage and what you guys have done to, make sure that y'all's marriage is still really healthy and strong despite running business together and raising kids.
Yeah. Yeah, we're 22 years deep. And so she will say this a lot to people. We're on our fifth marriage to the same person. And so this thing has like really changed over the last 22 years. We've grown with it. I have a wife that really values growing. And so what we do now, that's where I got the 4 Fs. We went through Rise Up Kings and Rise Up Queens. And so Rise Up Kings is in Dallas. And so I went there a few years ago to really just level myself up. I'm a former Marine, so I'm 49 now, and I got to the point where I was just like, life is pretty easy. Life is pretty soft for me. I'm in pretty good shape. I've got good finances. We've got a good marriage. I've got good kids. And I just started finding this thing where I was like, man, I just need something hard in my life again. And I know that sounds weird to some people, but when you've just went to the Marines and then you've built
Mhm.
businesses and then everything is cool, you just feel pointless. Work is not cursed. Fruitless work is a curse. Work that bears no fruit. And I think a life that's comfortable bears very little fruit, if any. And so I went there and then started really realizing that I was phoning some things in. And there was a couple of points in there that it was really physically taxing and then mentally taxing. And the guy running it said, hey, pile all this stuff on your wife, and then you think buying a vacation home is going to make everything right.
Mm,
And what's crazy, how crazy my mind is I'm like, she wrote them a letter telling them that I was buying this lake house for her. And there was no such letter. There was
yeah.
no such. He just said that. And I think, well, we know God just gives you the message you need in a moment. Cause I was literally like the next week going to close on a lake house. And I'm like, yeah. And that's me. And so you just put yourself in these situations with really strong dudes as a man, and they don't let you have excuses about things. So she went to Rise Up Queens, and then she got a similar, talking to. And so then we went to Elevate Marriage through them. And then she went through Deeper, and I went through a thing called The Forge. And they just started working on ourselves and so that we can have a better marriage. That's what we do. And we're real weird.
No, I love it. I love it. Sonny and I are the same way. So let me ask you this. If somebody is listening and they feel like they're not on the same page with their spouse as far as commitment to learning and growth, what is your advice for them? Because it sounds like you and Nancy are super aligned, committed, willing to do the work, but not everybody is like that.
Yeah, so, I'm archaic, so I'm gonna start with men, right? And I say that tongue in cheek, right? I think men set the direction of the house. And so if your spouse, whether man or woman, is not fired up about personal development, I believe it's because they're just not fired up about their life.
Mm,
Right. And so I can only speak from a male perspective. In fact, like where I could look at my wife and go, if she's not interested in developing herself, how am I showing up to make her feel like either she can't grow anymore because of the situation she's in? She feels trapped, or she's got it so good, evidently, or she thinks she just knows everything that she needs to know. So I'm like, those are two different problems, right?
Yeah.
The first is if I'm not showing up and giving her space and safety, right, to grow and that home that protects and says, "Hey, I can get excited about the growth because everybody get excited about possibility," or I'm coddling her so much that I don't say anything that might make her feel a certain way, and she just thinks that I'm the problem because I never tell her that, hey, you could do these things and real feedback of how you feel, because a man who cannot express those things cannot feel respected. So there's my black and white. And I'm sure there's a lot of third options in gray area, like, all the debates that can happen.
Okay, can we go back to the parenting piece for a little bit? I know that you have really been intentional about teaching your kids how to think instead of what to think. Can you tell the listeners what that means and how you do it and what that looks like in real life?
Yeah. There has to be a worldview that you agree on or teach your kids, right? And so you raise your children with a certain worldview. And I don't care who you are, you're raising them with a worldview. I was talking about the atheists earlier, and I told them the other day, because I get in these conversations with clients. That's why they're my clients, because they like someone who just tells the truth, right? And so, one of them, we were talking about the worldview and the psychology and the philosophies that he has as a person who's raising a child. And I'm like, well, you know that we can agree on that largely what you teach them is Judeo-Christian values. And he was a little bit confused by that. I said, well, you grew up in Louisville, Kentucky, and our whole society is set up on Judeo-Christian values. Those more than rubbed off on you. Like, you lived your whole life here, even whether you believe or not, doesn't matter. That is your worldview in which you make decisions in this society. So he got on the same page with that.
Yeah.
And so what to think, how to think, not what to think. Well, how to think has to start with this. And so one of the things that I talked about is, like, we talk about the virgin birth, right? Well, people have a hard time with that. I have a hard time with that, right? But I told the guy, I said, look, rationally, I said, congratulations on your big faith. Like, you have a lot more faith than I do. And so I said, congrats. And he's like, what? And I said, well, I believe in one human with a virgin birth. One human out of all the humans, right? And women made all the humans, right, Ann?
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's a lot of, like, responsibility women make, all the humans. Even this one, this is the only human that man didn't participate in. Like, what a crazy world, right? And then I said, but your faith is so big. Like, you believe in a virgin birth of a universe. Like, something came from nothing and order came from chaos. Like, that's huge faith. That's bigger than what I got, because I'm just looking for one human. You're like all the humans and all the universe. And so that's just deductive reasoning, right? It's like, well, that's how to think. It's like, what makes sense? What can you defend? Like, apologetics in our faith. And if your kids don't understand apologetics, like, they're going to go to a university and they're going to get eaten alive because they don't know how to defend the faith. And, one of the things that I do teach my kids is this, is like, it's the fear of God is the beginning of wisdom. It's in there, right? So the verse is the beginning of wisdom is the fear of God. And people have a hard time with that. One lady said, Barrett, well, why would I fear God? He's all loving. And I'm like, I don't know if you understand love then. So I started asking her about love, right? And she didn't have a clue. And she said, well, why would you fear God? I said, well, do you have a dad? And she's like, well, yeah. It's like, is he a good dad? She says, yeah. I said, do you fear disappointing him sometimes? She's like, yeah. I said, well, that's why he's a good dad. Like, that's the fear of God, like the beginning of wisdom. If you don't fear God and you fear your dad, like, I don't know, he created the cosmos. Like, he's bigger, right, than your dad. So she wasn't a believer. And so I'm like, yeah, of course you don't understand it. It's fine. But these things are hard to swallow if you don't understand them. But if you rationalize it like that, you're like, oh yeah, then you would fear the disappointment of your dad, your father, this righteous person or thing, right? And so when you understand that, you go to college and you say, now I know why there's so many intelligent people, but no wisdom, because they don't believe in God. And so there is no wisdom where people don't believe, right? And so then you ask people like, well, where does your morality come from? And they can't explain it, right? That's not wisdom. Like, you don't, if morality is all relative to whatever you believe, then murder is okay. It has to be because it's just what you believe. And so there are people who believe that that is good. And so they shouldn't go to prison because if it's all relative, then that's the way it is. And so these things fall apart if you just understand them a level deep. So that's how to think. It's like, where do your morals come from? And they cannot be, you cannot be God, a God unto yourself and just get your own set of morals. You won't make it long.
I know that your son played golf. So tell us about, I want to shift a little bit. So tell us about when it was hard and he wanted to quit. Those moments, like how do you know as a parent when to push, right? Push
Yeah.
through the I want to quit and when to provide the right amount of support. Because what's really interesting is I heard a speaker recently and she talked about how the most confident, grittiest kids are the ones that played a sport consistently throughout their life.
Is that Angela Duckworth?
No, but this lady
Yeah.
learned from some of her research. Yeah. And so, just watching you and your journey with your son, and I know you guys went to, a lot of his golf tournaments, and as he navigated this sport for so many years, like what was that journey like and how did you know how to guide him correctly on that?
Yeah. So we talked a lot. And so I don't like, so let's talk about quitting, right? So there was a time where he quit in baseball in the middle of the season.
Mm.
And like I encouraged him to. And I think he was 7 or 8, right? So people are like, oh, I grew up saying, you don't quit in the middle. If you start something, you finish it. And I'm like, well, let's think about how to think. Like, not what to think, but how to think. Well, everyone on planet Earth has quit way more things than they finished. As a matter of fact, Ann, you have quit everything else that you currently don't do. So you've quit everything else. And I get the whole deal, right? Well, the reason I let him quit is because he was being coached by a very unreasonable, low character coach. And I will not allow my 8-year-old to have to endure that for some messed up reason and then the next one is like, well, Barry, he's going to have to deal with people who, are like that in life. And I'm like, but not at 8 years old. He don't. If he were 18, maybe we'd have a different discussion. If he were 28, we would definitely have a different discussion but you teach them how to deal with people as an 8 years old. They don't know how to understand this guy who's cursing them out. And I'm like, no. So no, Luke, I vote you quit. And he's like, yeah, Dad, this is bad. I go, okay, cool. Quitters never win. Winners never quit, right? But then let's switch it to golf because golf is brutal.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't know if you've ever played, but this ain't basketball where you're having a bad game and we put you on the bench and you get to get replaced and just hang out on the bench because, man, today was a tough day. In golf, you start around and you hit every single shot until 18 and that ball goes in the hole, and what you get is what you get, and it feels like life is crashing down. And so his 8th grade year, and he's pretty talented golfer who's always worked hard. His 8th grade year, he played up and played and got in the junior varsity spot.
Wow.
And they asked him to play because somebody couldn't make it and all the things. And he was good enough. Like, he could play with those kids, at least the middle of the pack and lower. Right. And so we go and we love, and it's just this pressure and this opportunity. And man, he didn't rise to the occasion. And so he started swinging, and his golf swing was what we call laid off that day. It was so laid off that it was like the club would come below his shoulder blades, and it's supposed to be above your head. And so he starts hooking it. And I mean, it's one of the most torturous days I was an adult and I was like, oh my God. And you can't give them advice. You're not allowed to talk to your golfer. They will get disqualified. They will get penalties. You just have to watch, and you just see him just melting. And at the end, he's like, and then you just have to let him feel it. You ain't talking to him on the way to home, Dad. Like, you want to get your kid to quit? Be that dad. And I can tell you how I switched from that dad because I was
Yeah.
an athlete. I putting all this perseverance is number one. If I've always said this, actually, it's funny. We talk about Angela Duckworth, but I said, if I was going to describe my son as one word, it would be gritty. He is
Mm.
gritty. When the chips are down, he is as gritty as anybody you're ever going to see. He will keep going. Part of it, I think it's in him, but also he sees what we do. My wife, like she's that way. We're like a bulldog on a bone, man. Like we're not going to give up. And so, number one, if you're a parent, your job is not to coach them, it's to support them. Now, some of that support is tough. Like it's tough going in our house. And then you could interview him too, by the way. He has a podcast called Living for His Glory. Yeah, it's all about God, you know. And so that was that day. And then there's been times before that and after that. And golf is just, but as we went through, then he got into, after his 8th grade year, I said, hey, okay, you're serious about this. Are you serious about this? And then we sat down and I said, what do you want your future in golf to be? Or don't you want to be? Do you just want to play? Because he was going into their high school is one of the best golfing schools in Kentucky. And
Mm.
it has been for 20 years. And so when he was going into that, I'm like, if you don't take lessons and work hard, you're not going to make the top 5. Like not at this high school. You're just not. And so I said, I'm happy to invest. What do you want to do? And so he made the decision what he wanted to do. And are you serious about this? And then we interviewed coaches. He was in the mix. So we picked together a coach. And then we created a plan with the coach, right? You're talking about the personal VTOs here. This is where the 1-year plan and the rocks come in with personal and family VTOs. And so every year we would go, right? I'm pointing at his room. We would go to his room once a year and we would do a 1-year plan based on a 3-year picture and a 10-year target. And then we would do quarterly rocks once a quarter. And so when the vision is clear, right? He can persevere, right? We'll just make that rhyme. When you know the why you're doing it, you can get through anyhow. And so then his coach rebuilt his swing and it was terrible forever. And then finally, his sophomore, junior, and senior year, his sophomore year, they went to state. His junior year, 2 others went to state, like individuals, 3 of them, because they were in a tough conference. And then their senior year, they went to state and got runner up. But all 4 of those boys persevered through that. And they actually sent 2, this is like getting weedy, right? 2 middle school teams to state, 5-5. And he was on the bottom 5. And so all those kids who were in that 10, only 4 of them made it all the way through because when everybody's good and
Yeah.
everybody's coming to get you, the people who are really committed rise to the top. So Luke was in the bottom 5. And so the whole way though, I just checked in and go, hey man, is this what you want? Because if it's not, let's talk about it. And so now, he had these aspirations of being a PGA Tour professional. I asked him one question last quarter and he killed that dream because he wanted to kill the dream.
What was the question?
So I said, if you were going to make the PGA Tour in 3 years, would you still be doing, number one, would you still be doing what you're doing right now? Or would you have to change, quit school, quit playing college golf, quit doing the studying to be a pastor? Because you're going to make it in 3 years. You're going to be 22 years old. And you're going to have to make the PGA. What do you have to do? And he would list it through all the things that he would have to do. And at the end of it, he's like, I don't want to be a tour player, Dad. I said, okay, cool. What do you want to be? He's like, I want to be a pastor. And I said, okay, same question. You're going to be a pastor. 3 years. What's type of And then that focusing question just gets rid of all the other garbage that's in that head. And it cuts through all the crap and gets you to the most important things you need to be doing, right? So now he's just playing college golf because he wants to play college golf, and it's not going to end up anything. He's playing good, and he's got a scholarship in college golf, so it helps him achieve his goal. Like, because if you quit the golf team and you lose that college scholarships, now you got to work because I'm not paying. I pay for half of it, but not the other half.
It sounds like you've really been able to separate your own desires, your own projections from what he wants to do so that
Yeah.
you're not projecting on him. But I don't think it's so easy for everyone, for most parents to do that.
Let's not talk about easy. Let's talk about a choice that I made a long time ago. I used to be that dad because look, literally, I could go through my high school transcripts here, I could go through, but I was an athlete and like I went to state in track and those
Mm,
types of things, right? So I achieved, but I found myself not trying to live vicariously through my son. I already lived my life. It was more that I didn't consciously think this, but I know now it was subconscious that I was tying my weird self-worth to what he could achieve, which is, I know it's human. And then what I watched is I started watching our relationship deteriorate about sixth and seventh grade. And he would look over to me and after he hit a bad shot in golf, and I'd be like, with this look. I never like berated him because I'm not an idiot, but you could see it, like he could see it. And then I just started watching. I started talking to my wife about it, and I just was that guy. And so then I made a choice to be the thumbs up dad. So no matter what shot he hit, if it went out of bounds, if it went in a bunker, if it hit the water, it was a birdie, it was an eagle, it was a double bogey. It didn't matter what the shot was. He would look at me and I'd give a thumbs up. And so from like seventh or eighth grade on, I was just the thumbs up dad. And so that was more for me
wow.
almost than
Yeah.
him. And then it separated my own ego. Like, who am I? That's why I love my son's podcast. It's called Living for His Glory, because so many dads make this weird eye to their kids that their sons are somehow living for their glory. And I'm like, no, it's for God's glory. And so, it's one of these, he writes on his shoes, LH8, living for his glory, whatever the initials
Oh,
are. He puts those in a cross. So he's in high school and he's a senior and he's a big deal. They're going to state and all this stuff. And the younger kids, and he goes to a Christian private school, and the younger kids look down at his shoes and they ask him later, like, what is that? And he says, well, that's living for his glory. That's to make sure that it was for his glory. That's what he used to say, just for his glory on his shoes. And they asked him what the initials were, and he says, for his glory. And so those kids started writing that on their shoes.
that's beautiful.
Check, right?
Yeah.
And so that kid, man, he's crazy good. I'll say it again, I'll brag on him. And so this is perseverance, right? He knows whose he is, right? And who he is.
Yeah.
So they're at his graduation and somebody's giving a speech, a young lady, and she was talking about a big revival they had like that year at school. And she was alone and she was sitting there and she was crying because she was just reflecting and feeling things. And then she said in this speech, she said, and somebody came up and put their hand on me. She's like, it was Luke Barrett. And she said, man, he always knew when to do stuff like that. It's been like 3 years ago, I'm sitting here. And so that's why I could persevere, right? But you instill that your children, they serve others. And I'll say both of my kids are that way. Lacey's that way. Lacey just wants to serve other people and she wants the best. And my daughter has never met a underdog that she didn't love. She's like, she'll get on to me because I'm no longer an underdog. And I'll just say, if people just lace up their boots and let's go, they'll be fine, And Lacey's like, Dad, you need to understand. And I'm like, well, I grew up in a single wide trailer on government cheese and food stamps. Like, I do understand. And she's like, well, you've forgotten. And so people need help, Dad, And I'm like, yeah. And so she does that. My kids are just like that. My wife's like that, I forget. I think you just put your head down. Let's go. You've seen me.
Okay, so we've covered faith and family. Can you talk a little bit about fitness?
Yeah, I can tell you about fitness. So, fitness, I'm 49. 49 ain't 29.
Ain't that the truth?
And so I do a lot of things, man. Right now I'm working on my bioavailable testosterone. My testosterone's fine, but there's a thing called sex hormone binding globulin. that is binding up a lot of my free and bioavailable, which keeps me from some things. But I've gained 8 pounds of muscle in the last 6 months by focusing on strength training and working on eating the right things. And so right now I'm on a pretty low carb diet, not no carb, like not crazy, but I'm eating mostly like fish, chicken, fish, meat, greens. I'll have some sweet potato every once in a while on workout days. But I do genetic testing for myself. I know where I'm from. Everybody, we always thought we had like Native American in our bloodline, like every other white dude wants to in America. Well, that's not true. Like I am 96.9% European with like the 82% from the British Isles. Like I'm a white dude. Oh, that's that's just who I am. And so when you just start discovering that, and then you start looking at your foods, and I measure my heart rate, my, sleep, I'm measured to the max, my HRV every day, 8 years younger cardiovascularly. And so I go pretty deep on fitness. And then I understand more than anything that, muscle is the currency for aging, skeletal muscle. And so I'm as heavy as I've been. I got up to 194. It was the heaviest I've ever been, but it was like adding muscle. And now I'm back to 185, which is a lot more muscle, less fat. But I've got my eating dialed in. I'm working out, lifting. I make sure that that's a priority. I do cardio, not as much as I used to, because I'm working on muscle. And so, but my whole family's like that. My son works out. My wife is very focused on her fitness. We're very aligned. And that's why I said the number one thing that you can do is it's who you marry. Like,
Yeah.
but that's where I'm at as far as health goes. And then I look at people like Kurt Schneiber. Kurt Schneiber? Well, Kurt is, and I asked him to mentor me a little bit, but he's exactly 20 years older than me. And when I watched him in the gym, he's a monster. He is a beast. And so when I look at people like that, I ask them their opinion, and I say, hey, how do you do that? What are you doing? What are you trying to look for? What did you do to stay motivated? Like, what are you doing? And so, in 20 years, I have people that I look at that says, oh, that's the way I want to be in 20 years, do that 20-year thinking.
Yeah.
And then back it up, and I go, okay, I wanted to gain 10 pounds of muscle in this year, which I put on my 1-year plan. And so this quarter was eat 200 grams of protein a day and finish the RP hypertrophy 90-day plan, right? Those were the two things that I did to set it up, and they're working.
Yeah. A lot of protein.
It's the building blocks, right? Protein. And so then I'm going to cut, like after this quarter, I'm where I want to be as far as muscle. And so I'm going to go back down to about 170, right? So I work with a health coach on that. I get my labs done every 90 days.
Okay. And then the last F, finance.
Finance is one of the most important to me because of how I grew up, very poor. I watch how it can change family trees. I am very focused, like you said earlier, on making sure that my children understand what they have, because it's easy not to. It's easy to just to give them everything, especially my daughter. I'm like, oh yeah, you want something? She'll text me with her little eye emoji, whatever they do, And my son cannot do that with me. I'm like, I do not care. But yeah, they do that. And so what I look at for the finances, number one, am I doing everything that I can to make the money that I can? And everybody has a different skill set. And, unfortunately or fortunately, whatever it is, not everybody's skill set, natural skill set, or the way they do business is going to equal like all this money, right? I happen to have a skill set and a business that most people don't have the ability to make that much money, just open and honest. And that's okay, because the math is the same, and you just have to have a longer thing. And so when I look at just investing, I'm a very boring person. And so I look at index funds. This is not advice. This is just, I'm telling you what I do. Is that okay? This is not for everybody advice, but if you were going to take advice, this is what Warren Buffett would tell you. That's how I found out about it anyway. I would take an index fund. That's what I do. And I put a percentage of my income in there every month over and over until the rest of my life, and then never stop. And if you put, the math says you put $500 a month in a index fund over 40 years, you're going to have at least $3 million. So people say, well, I don't have $500. I'm like, you got 50. And so if you start investing $50 a month, yeah, that 50 is not going to grow into the biggest number. I think it will grow into like $500,000, but it's not the 50. You get started with the 50. That starts your mindset, your philosophy, because a type of person who will invest 50 when they don't have it will start to make more money. Will find other ways to make more money. And then you'll go to 100. And then that type of person, it grows. And pretty soon you've grown and you invested and you've figured out how to make more money by bringing more value. And then you're doing 5, 6, 7, some people $1,000 a month. You can get up to $2,000 a month. You're watching what you spend because borrow is slave to the lender. The rich rule over the poor. And as Dave Ramsey says, the paid off home mortgage has become replace the BMW as a status symbol of choice. Like I've heard that one a lot, right? And so every day I listen to someone in finance and usually it's Dave Ramsey. Over the last 20 years, we did Financial Peace University, and we go to work. We don't take out a bunch of debt. We invest what we have. Once I'm set up for that, here's what I love. Once all that's set up, I just spend the rest. Like, I don't care. What do you want to do? You want to go to vacation? It's funded. Let's go on vacation. Where do you want to go? Oh, cool. Let's create a sinking fund for that. It's just these little bitty things that aren't glamorous. I don't think I'm going to create an app that's going to make me a multi-billionaire. I'm just going to be honest with you. I don't even know I can barely get on the apps that I have. So those are just the philosophies, right? And then you go and you deliver value to the world, and that world pays you for that value. It's so important. I told you the other thing, because I see myself as an investor now. We invested in a landscape company in Arizona, and you were surprised. I've never been there, but I know this guy and I invested in him. Well, we did our L10 today because we have those, and we hired an employee, and he's new. He's a great employee, but that money thing seems to escape him. And I told my business partner, I said, well, ask him if we paid for it, would he enroll and be open to Financial Peace University? We'll pay for that, because once he gets the finances under control, life is easier for you, and you can actually think about, because you cannot come to work every day and be your best if you're thinking about feeding your baby at home. So let's do that. So that's the finance piece.
Okay, before we wrap up, I want to ask you, what are you excited about? What are you working on? What's on the horizon for you?
So right now, it is the excitement of investing. We do another thing that we do, and I know you know this, but we do sales training, and we have a 4P framework for that. The first is philosophy. I believe that the number one thing that makes you successful in your life is your personal philosophy. The second P is psychology. That's how you get a great philosophy. You work on your psychology. And then process is the third P. And then presentation for sales, profit for business or your household. So the number one thing, I say that to say this, right? It's not sales training. I set up the 4P framework for life, right? The number one thing that I'm excited about is really helping young people understand these principles before they ever get into this world and start going through this. So my son, who's studying to be a pastor, is also starting a membership model for young people who are between the age of 16 and 28, right? And so what he wants to do is build this framework where people can come and learn and start to grow in their faith, their family, their fitness, their finance before they ever get any of that stuff, right? And so I'm excited about helping young people not have to worry about those things that may not have a father, may not have a mother, may not, even if they do have a father and mother, like, I don't know if you're keeping up, but most of them ain't teaching them what they need to know. Most of them aren't living the life that they need to live to so that their kids can catch it. They're not being set up. 60% of people live paycheck to paycheck. And so if an old country kid that grew up in a trailer like I did can do it, and I know it's just here, any people can do it. This is America. So the thing that I'm the most excited about is starting to mentor young people to become and live this life that they never dreamed of.
Barry, it has been incredible spending time with you today. You have so much wisdom, and I love everything that you share. And can you tell the listener how they can get a hold of you if they want to learn more about you, the work that you're doing? What's the easiest way to get more Barry?
Yeah, I know I'm not on any social media personally. I have people that do that, but you can reach out to us on Instagram, LinkedIn. I know we're on Facebook. I know that you can Barrett at eosworldwide.com. You can email, you can Google me, Barry Barrett. There's not a lot of us out there like, that are named Barry Barrett. There are some, but that's the easiest way to find me. And I'm pretty available to anybody who wants to talk. And, one of the things that I always, if you look at the last thing that I was the most fired up about, it had nothing to do with me making money,
Mm,
nothing.
yeah,
And so I get fired up about young men specifically who want to make a big difference in this life. They just don't know how.
yeah.
And so you can message me, call me, whatever it is, but I'm out there.
Thank you so much, Barry. Appreciate you.
You
Been
bet.
incredible having you on the show today.
Thanks.
Thanks for tuning in to Empowered Living. I hope today's conversation sparked some inspiration and gave you tools to live more intentionally in your family, work, and life. If you enjoyed our episode today, be sure to subscribe so you never miss an inspiring story or actionable takeaway. And if you know someone who would love this episode, share it with them because living an intentional life is better when we do it together. Until next time, remember, the life you want doesn't happen by chance, it happens by choice. Let's keep creating it one step at a time.